The Indonesian province of Aceh was once known as the veranda of Mecca. It's through here that traders brought Islam to the rest of Southeast Asia. Today, the region is still known for its devotion to the Muslim faith. But a debate is raging as to whether strict Sharia laws should be implemented here. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. In this edition of 101 East, we ask if there is a place for Sharia law in pluralist, modern Indonesia. The literal meaning of Sharia in Islam is path. Its laws guide all aspects of Muslim life, from daily obligations to financial dealings. But a new law here in Aceh calling for adulterers to be stoned to death is being scrutinized. We now look at how Sharia law is being implemented and practiced in Aceh. It seems dark clouds have always hung over Aceh. This province experienced nearly 30 years of civil war and a devastating tsunami, both of which severely affected the population. Throughout their tribulations, many Acehnese have clung to their Islamic faith for strength. The religion dominates Acehnese life and culture. This traditional performance, the Rapai Geleng, incorporates songs based on Islamic teachings. In 2001, Indonesia gave the province special powers to enact Sharia law, which most Acehnese accept. But some want the drums of Islam to beat louder. In September this year, Aceh's legislature passed a law allowing adulterers to be stoned to death. It was one of the last acts by the Islamist-dominated council before they were voted out in national parliamentary elections.
We already have civil laws dealing with banking or crimes like drug trafficking and corruption. But there is nothing that addresses adultery or sex outside marriage, both of which is forbidden in Islam. That is why we introduced this law to guide Muslims to the right path.
The legislation has caused ripples across Indonesia. The governor of Aceh has refused to sign off on the law. Members of the new legislative council, made up mostly of the secular Aceh party, say they will review the legislation.
Menurut saya belum perlu dilegalkan. Cuma yang penting kita berikan pemahaman kepada masyarakat.
In my opinion, we don't really need this law or to legislate any Islamic laws. Our priority now is to focus on improving the economy of Aceh through improving farming or fishery sectors. If the people are hungry, they won't be able to focus on religion. So it's best to look after their welfare first and then focus on the religious guidance of the people.
Aceh has always been known for adhering to a stricter interpretation of Islam compared to the rest of Indonesia. Sharia police patrol the streets for Muslims contravening Islamic codes of conduct. These girls caught without the obligatory headscarves will be lectured on Islamic morals. These two men were caught drinking alcohol, a crime punishable with caning. And this unmarried couple were told not to associate with each other in the dark so as not to tempt sex outside marriage.
I think a majority of the Acehnese community appreciate the work of the Sharia police. Their role is to uphold Islamic values and to guide Muslims here down the right path. There are so many bad influences now that can degrade the morals of our society.
Among the activities considered morally corrupt is watching Western films. There are no cinemas in Aceh, so Irna Rianti and her friends watch pirated DVDs at home. They are avid fans of American movies and TV series, especially Sex and the City, a show most conservative Muslims would find to be morally corrupt.
Kalau saya pribadi sih nggak ada ya, Mbak.
Why should my morals be compromised by a film or a TV show? Only close-minded, negative people would think that way. This show talks about friendship. It shows independent, strong women who can solve their own problems. So for me, it's got nothing to do with morality.
Irna says that as a Muslim, she supports the stoning law, but is concerned it may be misused.
Actually, the law is fine, but the problem lies in the implementation. We need to ensure that the people who carry out the laws are qualified. We need to be sure that they are just and they themselves are not morally corrupt.
Some argue as to whether the debate of a Sharia law should even be a priority here. After all, this is a province still recovering from the ravages of a civil war and the 2004 tsunami. With unemployment and poverty levels running high, many feel there are far more pressing matters to attend to other than policing Aceh's morality.
People in Aceh are still dealing with the transition from conflict and how to keep the peace. We're struggling with the lack of jobs, food, shelter, education, medical facilities, and so many other issues. These are the important things now. No one wants this stoning law. It's only supported by fundamentalists who have a political agenda.
That agenda is waged mainly by Islamist parties who want Sharia law implemented across all of Muslim-majority Indonesia. But it's not an ideology shared by many, as shown by the lack of support for such parties in the last election. Observers say most Indonesians think Sharia law contravenes the national philosophy of Pancasila, which includes the belief in social justice for all. But not all agree.
Saya rasa Pancasila itu lahir dari pejuang-pejuang Indonesia.
Pancasila was established by our forefathers who were Muslims. One of the elements of the Pancasila is the belief in one God, which to me means Allah. So to me, it just doesn't make any sense when anyone says Sharia law doesn't fit our national ideology.
But moderate Muslims don't think there is a place for Sharia criminal law in modern Indonesia.
In the case of Aceh, because they introduced the idea of stoning to death, and then the idea of hudud of criminal law, which is definitely it was old interpretation towards Sharia, because one of the most important things related to Sharia is how to uphold justice. It's stoning to death related to justice? I don't think so.
Others warn that adopting stricter Sharia laws could affect Indonesia's international reputation, and is urging the president to make a stand.
Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono now sits in the G20. He sits with the top leaders of the world. He sits next to Obama. He sits at very important dinner tables. And they all expect Indonesia to be the #8 economy in the world by 2040 or 2045. It can't afford to do that if it's stuck with a struggle back home about people trying to introduce stoning for adultery or going around deciding if women's jeans are too tight.
Many say Indonesia is undergoing the problems of a modernizing democratic Muslim country, and the struggle to separate state from religion has to be handled with sensitivity. Otherwise, critics warn, the debate could split this pluralist nation between secularists and Islamists, signaling more dark clouds on the horizon. Joining us now in front of the Baitur Rahman Mosque here in Banda Aceh in Indonesia, we are joined by Professor Bahtiar Effendi from the State Islamic University in Jakarta, and Fuad Amshari, Vice Chairman from the Indonesian Council of Clergies. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Let's start off by talking about how Indonesia is a Muslim majority country. Is there really then a need to legislate Sharia law here in a population that would be familiar with Islamic values and Islamic codes of conduct? If I could start with you.
Oh, yes, of course. We have so far still adopt the colonial time of criminal code, and we have to try to have a different code for the criminal law. And to my opinion, the best to change it is something related to Indonesian Muslim, because Muslim here is a majority of the population. So the case of Aceh, for example, is a good example for pioneering the changing of the criminal code from the colonialization era to this era today.
Bahtiar, would you agree that there's a need to change the current criminal code in Indonesia?
Yes and no, because Indonesia, first of all, Indonesia is neither Islamic nor secular state. I think we should bear that in mind, even though the fact remains that the majority of the Indonesians are Muslim. And I think there are a number of Islamic law that actually has been passed within the national parliament, but basically they are family and private law and does not concern with the criminal law. And the case of Aceh is different, that the political arrangement that has been established in 2001 gave Aceh the authority to administer themselves according to Islamic law. But I think actually that's too much, because I don't believe that the Acehners actually need Sharia.
There is evidence that Sharia law is becoming more popular. After all, some 50 regencies have adopted Sharia-influenced bylaws since the special autonomy
But if you examine the quality of the law, I don't think that you can call it as an Islamic law, because sometimes it deals only with the code, and sometimes it deals only with the regulation that beyond 9 o'clock in the evening, women cannot be outside the house. Can you say that that's Islamic law? I don't think that they deal with the Islamic law.
Would you agree that perhaps some Islamic laws, like the criminal laws in Sharia,
I better say this. Once you decide that certain law is nationalized or regionalized, like in Aceh, by legislators, then it will be accepted for the whole of population. So, to my opinion, Islamic law, or what you call secular law, is just a process. It's a process. I mean that the legislators, inspired by something, in my opinion, one of the inspiration is the Islamic principles believed by the legislator, and then decided to be a law. In this case, in Aceh, for example, is criminal law. So once the criminal law is coded and then accepted, then it becomes adopted for the whole of the population.
Are you saying then that the current laws, the current criminal laws in Indonesia are not enough? Is that what you're saying?
No, of course not. It is just because coming from, adopted from the colonializations era.
Fauzia, the problem is that Indonesia is not an Islamic state. This is the problem. Unless Indonesia become an Islamic state, that there is no, there is no problem whatsoever. Look at the case of Aceh.
I disagree with this one. It is not a matter of Islamic state or secular state or whatever state you have. The point is that what is the realization, the real condition of Indonesian population. Once you have to...
Aceh actually is a good example. Aceh is a good example. The law on criminal law has been passed by the regional parliament. This is the Islamic law. How can the governor put on hold on that law by not signing that law? I'm not saying that the governor is vetoing it, but this is an Islamic law. Can anybody veto or put on hold Islamic law? This is somehow different, So it gives me a speculation that actually, even within Aceh themselves, within the elite, within the governorship, the sole executor of any policies designed for Aceh does not necessarily agree with the criminal justice based on Sharia. The stoning to death for the adulterer, they just passed by the regional element. And if you are committed to the particular of law, how can you put that on hold?
Gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there for just a while. We'll take a short break now, but when we come back, we'll have more about Sharia law here in Indonesia. Stay with 101 East.